Well, hello,
Hey, everybody. Coach Jay here with Coach Kyle.
And this is kind of something that we put together at the last minute, but you had a gap in between your coaching classes today. And I thought, one of those stories you've told your classes, and I've heard you tell it a million times that people would probably be interested in is, what is the history of chess?
Wow, you like a little story. So what is War and Peace? Yeah. So, what is the history of chess? So chess does have a fantastic, colorful history. It's a game, but
is it really?
But does backgammon have a history? I mean,
not one that I've ever heard you teach about.
Right. So I don't know, but chess has a fantastically colorful history. It's a great story. And people ask me, when was chess invented? Where was it invented? And that is up for argument. People say Persia. Some people say India. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. When did we get the new rules? The different parts of the world play in different countries. We play, and what we're talking about every time I'm up here talking is Western chess, which is now, we just call, or kind of egocentric, we call it chess. And,
so what is Eastern chess?
There's different, like Chinese chess. The pieces move differently. And then Vietnamese chess, your rook can't capture, it's called a cannon, unless there's actually a piece in between your cannon and the piece that you want to capture. So there's some subtle differences like that in different parts of the world.
But I'm willing to bet that if you go to China or Vietnam and you play chess, most people are playing the same.
That's true.
Of chess.
China did win the Olympiad not too long ago. So they definitely know Western chess or chess as we know it. So in any case, about 1,000 years ago or so, and I'm going to talk in generalities. If you are a chess historian, you're not here to critique me, hopefully, but
we would love to talk to you at some
point. We'd love to. But about 1,000 years ago or so, there was a queen who learned how to play chess, and she didn't like it because, she loved it except for one thing. The queen, the piece, the chess queen could only move diagonally one square at a time, like a checker. And when she made it to the other side of the board, she was stuck. And that was it. So this queen said, we're going to change this. And
is this a real story?
True story. This one's a true story. And so they changed the way the queen moves. She changed it, and it became the most powerful piece on the board. And with that change, chess really started to flourish because suddenly there was exciting attacks. You could sacrifice your queen. And which was kind of an interesting thing, right? She created this queen, this new queen, and yet you could give her away, and that became the most exciting part of chess: a queen sacrifice, parting with the lady, they say. And so that was about 1,000 years ago or so. And since that time, the chess pieces have been moving that same way. Obviously, we have some rules that have changed a little bit over the years. Castling,
moving pawns 2 squares.
Yeah, moving the pawns 1 or 2. Pawn promotion. Can you under promote and things like that. And then en passant, the new rule, just a few hundred years old. So, but I think probably actually one of the more recent changes is the wide acceptance of the who moves first, and I think it was really 1840-ish, somewhere around there. And already white was usually moving first in most cultures, most places where they play chess. But
they made it official.
They made it official. They actually had like a little meeting somewhere. And the idea was that the black pieces were too beautiful. They were made of ebony, and it wasn't fair to play with the black pieces and get the first move. So usually, you would set up the board, and then you would flip a coin. But then... and around 1840, they said, no, you don't get to have the beautiful pieces and get to move first. So that's when white got to move first around 1840.
So that's one of the stories I haven't heard you tell me before.
Yeah, well,
so I'm full of stories. File that away.
Yeah, and then stalemates. A stalemate has run the gamut. I mean, if you got your opponent to stalemate you, you won. If you got your opponent, if you stalemated your opponent or checkmated them, you won. So those things have changed, and of course now stalemate is just a draw. in any case, those are some of the overall big changes. But in the history of chess, there were players. The first books coming out. There were mentions of chess in books in the 1200s and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Ruy Lopez was one of the first that wrote about chess. Maybe it was the late 1500s or something like that. He was a Spanish priest, and a lot of you guys know the Ruy Lopez opening.
Yeah.
But part of his book was he gave advice to chess players like seat your opponent so that the sun is shining in their eyes. Nice,
solid chess advice.
Yeah, solid chess advice from Ruy Lopez. So that was Ruy Lopez, and then there was Gioacchino Greco and from Italy and stuff, and some of these guys that I don't know as well. I guess their theory and the things that we've learned from them isn't as valuable to a chess coach.
No,
they're just more of a nice little story from the
and a lot of the stuff that happened with the early chess writers is, the people in the 1500s, the people in the 1600s read their books, and then they improved upon it and wrote new books, and then this on and so on. So you read the latest book, and you're kind of up to speed in a lot of cases.
That's true. I mean, there were great players, in Italy and in Paris that were playing back in the day, Legal and Philidor and those guys, and
they've left their mark.
They have.
Sure. Between Legal's Mate, which you discussed in one of the early live streams we did,
right.
And also Philidor's
Defense and the Philidor Position.
Which, if you don't know what
Philidor's Legacy,
Philidor's Legacy is, and you do know what Smothered Mate is, then you know what Philidor's Legacy.
Right. So Philidor's Legacy is another name for Smothered Mate. Philidor Position, there's actually a couple of them. Yeah. There's one that's in a rook and pawn endgame, Francois Philidor, and then there's one in the queen versus rook. And they're called the Philidor because he was the first one to analyze them actually in a book and stuff. But let's move on to some of the more exciting part of chess.
So once we've kind of, the rules have settled down more or less. Things are stable. What's next?
1851. So big jump. Sorry, I know that you chess historians are groaning right now, but we're going to take a big jump and jump all the way to 1851.
Would you say 1851? That's the birth of modern chess?
It's the birth of international chess.
Okay.
It's because in 1851 there was the first ever international chess tournament, and I've mentioned it before.
At least that was recorded.
Right. At least it was recorded
that we know about.
And so London, 1851. Howard Staunton, who the chess pieces are named after Howard Staunton, the typical piece that you use in tournaments and such. And Howard Staunton organized this event. Now, I have to say, it's tough to organize an event and also play in it.
You have organized a lot of events.
It's tough to organize and play. So the fact that he didn't do so well, I think he would have done a lot better if he wasn't organizing the event.
He needed a good TD.
Yeah, he needed a tournament director. He did. But it's to me, that would have been an exciting, just a wonderfully exciting time to be at, because all these different countries were sending their players, and there were no ratings. People didn't really know how good everybody else was that was coming to this event. Everybody thought the guy from their chess club was going to win. So
it's kind of like when you're playing with kids on your street and you're like, oh, he's the best basketball player on the street. Then he, shows up at middle school and gets schooled. You're like, wait, I thought.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's like my students, and this is a true confessions time. True confessions. That my students, I say, so if I went and played in the tournament in Los Angeles, how would I do? And my kids, oh, you would win it. You get first place. And forget about, Grandmaster Malik Kachian, International Master Andronik Montecosian, and Tatev Abrahamian, and all these strong players out there, Jack Peters, that would just smush me like a bug. Not to mention the number of strong 2,400 rated teenagers out there. So I'm 2,100. So I'm a good player, but I'm not a great player. Super world class. I'm a great coach. Well, that's my thing.
You can beat all the kids in your classes.
I can beat all the kids in my classes,
and that's what matters when you're teaching kids for a living.
So yeah. In any case. In 1851, they had the tournament in London, and we got a couple famous games from there. The immortal game, Anderson against Kieseritzky, was actually an offhand game before the tournament began. A lot of people don't know that. But he got to sacrifice the house, and it was used in a movie.
Oh, that game?
Yeah, that game. They used the end of it in that movie with Rutger Hauer, plays like the android. It was we'll think of it. You guys, if you know it, you can type it in and tell us. You'll get a bonus, something or other. Okay. In any case, that they used the end of that game in that movie. That was 1851, and then nobody was world's champion yet. They would say somebody who might be the best chess player in the world, but really nobody was declared an official world's champion. And so in the 1880s, then you had Wilhelm Steinitz, and Steinitz declared himself to be the world's champion after a match with Zuckertort. And
I imagine a few people read about that and said, "Hang on a sec."
Well, at one dinner they had where both players were present, somebody raised a glass and said, "To the world's chess champion," and both Zuckertort and Steinitz stood up. So yeah, there's definitely some differing opinions on that before the match. But then Steinitz wrote a book. And everything chess, the chess handbook. And so a guy that read it was Emanuel Lasker.
Oh, that's the name I recognize.
Emanuel Lasker read the book, and Emanuel Lasker was German. He was a mathematician. He was a math professor, and he was doing okay in chess tournaments, but he wasn't like amazing. And so he wrote a letter to his brother, Berthold, and said, "If I don't win this next tournament, I'm going to quit chess." Well, Lasker won the tournament, but how he won it was pretty interesting. You see, one guy had beaten him, and that guy was playing in a long game that was adjourned. In an adjourned game, they stop the game so people can go to dinner, and they go off to dinner, and they come back and they finish the game. But before they go, they write down the position, and then one player, whoever's turn it is, writes down what move they're going to play when they resume, and they seal the envelope, and off they go. When they came back to play, the tournament director accidentally left off one of the pawns for this player that was ahead of Lasker in the tournament, and that guy lost the game, not noticing the pawn was missing, and only later, oh no, a pawn was missing. Not too late. You can't complain after the fact. And so they ended up tied for first, and Lasker beat him in the playoff. And then Lasker became world's champion and was champ for 27 years, all because of one pawn. So if it weren't for that one pawn, he would have quit chess.
Wow.
But he beat Steinitz in about 1894, I think it was. And like I said, I'm not going to be like super exact with the dates, but 1894, he beat Steinitz, and Steinitz was stubborn. Lasker looked at his book and said, hey, this opening, Steinitz says that, black is better in this position after you do these moves, but I think white's better. And so he played that opening. Steinitz played those exact moves, and then sure enough, Lasker beat him from that position. And so the next time those colors were the same, he played him again, and Steinitz did the exact same moves, trying to prove that his book was right, when Lasker had proved in the game that the book was wrong. And so at least two of the games in that match were done deals because Lasker knew what position to start from. He had studied that exact position, said, I have an advantage here. And Steinitz, went and did that.
That's one of the early cases of two high-level tournament players studying each other's work.
Yeah, it was, and I don't think it was each other's work. I think it was Lasker studying Steinitz, and and Steinitz thinking he didn't need to study Lasker's because he thought he was just going to win the match. But you're right. Well, Lasker didn't play this precise style of chess. He liked to play edgy chess, and some people would they would accuse him of playing bad moves on purpose in order to get the opponent to play off-balance moves. to overextend themselves, to attack too early.
Hope chess is what you always used to call it.
And so, so he, Lasker didn't play like a machine. And as a result, he won a lot of games. He lost a few, but he won a lot of games because he was a clever guy and could get away with weakening his position a little bit to create an imbalance. And so Lasker was world champion for a long time. During World War I, not a lot of chess happened. And then in 1921, Capablanca finally got the match he wanted with Lasker, Lasker at that point was 54 and had tried to resign the match, resign the title to Capablanca. But Capablanca played him. They did it down in Havana in Cuba, and it was hot. And Lasker from Germany, he melted, he wilted, and that wasn't the reason that he lost the match. But he lost 4-0 with 10 draws, and then he went back to Germany, and I think he was in bed 6 months or something like that.
Oh my gosh,
recovering. But Lasker would come back, and I think he even won a tournament when he was like 67 and stuff. So he battled hard and until an older age. But Capablanca was a chess machine. And he had learned to play chess by watching his dad when he was 4. And as the legend goes, he was watching his dad, and after the game, Capablanca said to his dad, "You cheated in the game." And the dad said, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "You moved a knight from a white square to a white square. And knights always have to switch from white to dark or dark to white." And the dad says, "You don't even know how to play chess." And he said, "Yes, I do. And I can beat you, Daddy." And he says, "Oh, yeah, sit down." And Capablanca beat his dad.
Oh, goodness.
And so the dad took him to the Havana Chess Club, and right off the bat, at 4 years old, the masters couldn't give him queen odds and win. So that was a good sign. So Capablanca, by the time he was 12, was already a very strong player, probably the best in Cuba. And so he took a little break from chess. Then he went to Columbia University in New York, and instead of studying, I think he played on the baseball team there for a very short time. But instead,
he got distracted.
Instead of studying at Columbia, then he went and played chess all the time, and he would go play rapid transit chess. And rapid transit, this is before you're using a lot of chess clocks, and in that a guy would stand with a stopwatch in the middle of a room and go, "Move, move," and so every 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever, you would have to make your move. And in one of the tournaments that is recorded in history, I think he went 21-0 or something that. Anyway, he was extremely strong, natural player, not a hard worker as much as the champions who would follow him, but. And he thought he was just going to keep beating people. He had, a matter of fact, he had gone like 10 years, 1924 to 23 or something, or 14 to 23, I think, in which he had only lost one game. Of course, that was World War I was also going on. So he hadn't played a ton, but during that time, he just lost one tournament game. But he came up against Alekhine and 26, 27, one of those. And Alekhine was a hard worker. And I think Alekhine was the first real grandmaster. So,
and one of the most fun books to read is books of Alekhine's games. They are wild, all over the place.
Alekhine, technical genius. And these books, by the way, you're not going to find a book that looks like this. These are ones my dad had bound. And my dad was a chess player. If you've been following along, he was Florida state champ. He won the Florida Experts Tournament in 1963. But his favorite books, my dad would go and have them bound in hardback so that they were nice and strong. Even Nimzovich here. And so they last and stay together. A lot of people, this one is actually 2 different books together in one. Combinations and checkmates, 2 different books, 1001 sacrifices and combinations and stuff. And so dad would have those bound together. In which was nice. And, it was always convenient. This one he actually had bound and then put my name on the bottom.
Wow.
So it was a gift one year when I was young, and And so, yeah, I laid in bed and studied the book all the time. I think it helped out a lot. Chess patterns, once again, that's just 2002 puzzles. So 1001 in one of the books and 1001 in the other.
Yeah.
And this is just checkmate and sacrifices. So checkmate and tactics.
Yeah.
And two of the five disciplines. So, that helped me a lot. But then, for you guys, when I use Coach Jay's Chess Academy, of course, I include strategy and defense and in-game as well. So in any case, I digress. Back to Alekhine and Capablanca. So it was a real shock when Alekhine beat Capablanca, and then he avoided him. He was like Buster Douglas running from Mike Tyson. He was like, I don't want any piece of you because I know this time you'll take me seriously. And so he stayed away from him as much as he could. And he played guys like Bogolyubov and stuff like that, whose favorite thing to do was drink beer. And so, but then Alekhine, I don't know how it happened, but he got to be a bit of a drinker himself. And in 1935, he lost a match to the relatively unknown and not as much feared Max Euwe. And Euwe beat him. He was Dutch, and he was actually a boxer himself, but boxed in college and stuff. But Euwe beat him in a match, barely. And they say Alekhine was so inebriated during that match that he one time actually tried to relieve himself on the stage. And he might have even tried to castle illegally or something like that in one of the games. So Alekhine, after losing that match, he had a rematch clause, and he just crunched Euwe after that. They say he drank only milk for the time in which he prepared for that match. And so Alekhine was then world's champion and stuck around with it until he passed away under suspicious circumstances. But Alekhine died in 1946. And a good trivia question to ask your chess friends is, who was world's champion in 1947? Because the answer is nobody. In 1948, they had a tournament in which they were gathering the top 6 players in the world. But as it turned out, one of them couldn't make it. So it was 5 players. And the winner of the tournament was Mikhail Botvinnik. And Botvinnik, he was already an engineer professional. He loved, once computers came around, he was really into computers and trying to use computers with chess. But he never won a match while he was world champion. And yet he was champion as late as 1963. So that
doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
So what happened was that he had the rematch clause. So he drew a match. I think. Let's see. He drew matches and then he lost matches. So he drew with Bronstein, David Bronstein, who they say might have thrown the match because his family was in protective custody with the KGB or whatever it was called back then. And so then he had Bronstein, that was a draw, and then he lost to Smyslov, Vasily Smyslov, who was an opera singer. Smyslov was one of those first players they said didn't have a style. Alekhine was attacking with precision and knew his openings, and Emmanuel Lasker had been one that played edgy chess, but not perfect. And and Capablanca was called the chess machine. Mm-hmm. He played really precise and kind of boring chess, but practical. And it looks beautiful if you're really a chess aficionado. If you're not, then you're like, he doesn't sacrifice as much.
Someone do something.
As he's, like the other guys. So, but Smyslov didn't have a style. He said, I just play the best moves that I can find. And if the position demands that I'm strategic, then that's what I do. If I need to attack, I will. If I need to play defense, if I should trade to an end game, I'll do that. But Smyslov lost the title back to Botvinnik. And Botvinnik had this pattern. He would just, do his thing, not really work hard for the world's championship. And then he would study his opponent and their style and everything to prepare for the rematch, and then he'd come back and beat up on them. So then he lost to Mikhail Tal, and then he came back and beat Mikhail Tal. Now Mikhail Tal, many people, that's their favorite player in history. Tal was exciting and thrilling, just sacrifices and combinations. If you want to see exciting chess games, just search Mikhail Tal, TAL chess games, and you'll get to see some really fun stuff.
I'm starting to see why they might not have the rematch clause in.
So they actually
modern.
They actually got rid of it when he lost to Petrosian. So
he might have been abusing that a little bit.
Now, by the way, just to go back to Tal, Tal was very popular too. Not just played great chess, but he was a fun, friendly guy who told a lot of stories and things like that. And my friend Mark Reeve said that he knew guys from Russia, and they said that Mikhail Tal would just walk in somewhere and say, "I am Tal," and they would say, "Oh, you can have free dinner," or "I am Tal," and "Oh, a free flight for you to get from Riga to Moscow," and so he just had that kind of power over people because they just loved him so much. But Mikhail Tal, and then Botvinnik was back, and then Botvinnik lost to Petrosian, Armenian, the first Armenian to be world's champion, and
when was that?
And that was in 63. And so,
okay.
But then they took away the rematch clause. So then if Botvinnik wanted to qualify, he was going to have to go through the same rigmarole as all the other guys. And he wasn't willing to do it. He was actually pretty upset. And so he semi-retired, or mostly retired at that time. And Petrosian was world's champion until from 63 to 69. And in 69, he lost to a player who they thought, all the people in the chess world thought, would never lose a title. I just thought he was going to be like Magnus now or whatever, that, unless something really unexpected happened, he would just be the champ forever. And that was Boris Spassky. Spassky had a really complete game, tactical wizard. His end games were flawless. He's creative, knew his openings inside and out. And so he was champ, and he had dominated, like Mikhail Tal had dominated Bobby Fischer. But Fischer, what a story. I mean, Bobby Fischer was, he was crazy, but he wasn't always crazy. He got crazier as things went.
Yeah, a little bit.
But Fischer quit chess himself. He said that the Russians were colluding to beat him in tournaments and such. You can watch the movie Pawn Sacrifice with Tobey Maguire. But he stopped playing, and people thought, is he retired? Is he gone? But he was studying.
Oh.
And just all day, every day. And basically, he prepared every opening. He knew what to do. He'd seen every game that was ever published. He learned how to read Russian just so that he could.
That's a level of commitment.
Right. Could do more chess. And so then in 1971, they started the candidates matches. And so he had to play up against Mark Taimanov from Russia. And so the Russians, of course, they hated Bobby Fischer. And so they said to Taimanov, you got to go in there and represent. And so, back then this was communism, and the Russians were very big on, making sure that you represent your country very well, but honor and all these kinds of things. And the grandmasters were well compensated. They had grandmaster housing and had a car and didn't have to work in a factory, and they got to travel and stuff like that.
Middle of the Cold War.
Oh yeah, this is a big time Cold War. And so Taimanov, his match didn't start very well. He was losing and then losing and losing. And as a matter of fact, he kept losing, and he lost all 6 games. And it was, whoever won 6 games first. And usually there's draws and wins and losses, but he lost 6 games in a row and went back to Russia, and they were furious, and they took away his grandmaster housing, took away his car, took away his travel privileges, told him he had to go work in a factory, that kind of stuff. And, and some of this might be exaggerating, I don't know, but it makes for great stories. But, and so then next on the list was Bent Larsen from Denmark for Fischer to try to make his way up to play Spassky. And Larsen said, Taimanov's old, He goes, I'm going to show the world that Fischer's not that great. And Fischer beat him the first game, and Larsson's like, I had a stomach ache. And they beat him the second game, and he was like, jet lag. He beat him the third game. There's smoke in my eyes. He beat him the fourth game. He was like, he's pretty good. And then he just rolled over, and he lost game 5 and 6. Fischer had beaten 2 world-class grandmasters 6-0. It never happened before, not even anywhere close. And he had done it twice in a row against two of the best guys in the world. And so by the way, they say when it got to 4-0 against Larsson, that the Russians gave Taimanov back some of his privileges because they were like, okay, yeah, so Fischer's pretty good. But he couldn't travel for a long time. And then he played Petrosian. He won the first game, but then he pushed and lost the second. But he went on to beat Petrosian, and then he beat Spassky in Reykjavik in 1972 after a lot of drama with him not wanting to play and wanting more money, and so they came up with more money. He was the first ever to get that kind of money. Spassky, when he beat Petrosian, well, I think first of all, Fischer, gosh, what did he get? Was it 250,000 or something like that? 350,000 to beat Spassky, and Spassky, when he beat Petrosian, got $2,500. The equivalent in rubles. I mean, it was just like, it was the face of chess.
He needs a better agent.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, nobody wanted to see the match. It was a Russian against an Armenian, and so if you were outside the Iron Curtain, then you weren't getting to see anything. And so Fischer, didn't. He didn't meet the bell, so to speak, against Karpov, and he had 55 demands for Karpov. And said,
how many? When was this?
This was 75.
Okay, so 3 years later.
Yeah. So, and I mean, all the negotiating was probably in 74 and into 75, but the match was scheduled to take place in 75, and Karpov, did you met Karpov, right?
Yes.
So we met and we did the dinner in Vegas with Karpov. That was 15, 20 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a long time
ago. But but Karpov, who, as it turned out, was a really great guy. He met 54 of Fischer's 55 crazy demands, and everything from the chairs have to be a certain way, the squares on the chessboard, the lighting, every different thing. And so, in any case, the last demand was that Fischer said, Karpov, if you want to take the title from me, you have to beat me by 2 games in the match. And Karpov's like, if I beat you in the match, I beat you in the match, and I won't agree to that. And so Fischer didn't show up, and Karpov was...
He needed a buffer.
Yeah, so Karpov was champion, and he played in every tournament and won almost every tournament. So he was a worthy champion, and then he started having epic battles with Garry Kasparov.
Right.
And Kasparov beat him in their second match in 85. The first match was... It started in the Grand Palace in Moscow, and then by the end it was basically at the YMCA, because it went on for like 6 months, and Karpov had raced out to like a 4-1 advantage, but then 10 draws and then a win for Kasparov, and then 12 draws and a win for Kasparov, and Karpov had lost like 45 pounds, and then the president of the FIDE, Capablanca, he said, we're canceling this match. And so in any case, the next year, Kasparov took the title, and then there was some split, FIDE, the International Chess Organization, was doing things their way, and Kasparov wanted to do it a different way. And so I think it was Nigel Short, maybe they worked together to form the PCA, the Professional Chess Association. And so there was a split. There was 2 different organizations. And so in that time, it's kind of fuzzy, but you have different champions, and the knockout tournament format where you had a bunch of players and playing short matches to find out who was going to eventually be world champion. So it wasn't that same quality of chess. And so you got some guys with lesser names that were winning, and, Khalifman and Ponomarev and such, that a lot of people don't consider as the real world champions, although they're all very strong players. And so in 2000, Vladimir Kramnik, he beat Kasparov, and it was the first time since Capablanca and had beaten Lasker in 1921 that the match ended with the loser not winning a game. Kasparov couldn't win one game from Kramnik. It was a 16-game match, and after 15, they ended it because Kramnik was up 2-0 with 13 draws.
Oh, wow.
And so Kramnik was the new champion, and Kasparov was still the highest-rated player in the world. It was actually, by rating, the biggest upset ever in chess history. But he
would stay that way for a while.
Yeah, Kasparov was number one, but then after a while he retired to run, and do politics, and that didn't go perfectly for him. But he's a brilliant guy who never forgets anything. Oh yeah, he's always doing a bunch of stuff and works for human rights groups and things. In any case, you had Kramnik, and then Anand came along. Shirov. Topalov, Vesel and Topalov, and then Anand, and then Magnus Carlsen would come and take the title from Anand. Anand had a rematch, tried to get it back. Well, it wasn't a rematch, but he won the right to challenge, and didn't win. And then last November, Sergei Karyakin tried to get him, and that was really close. Had to go to the playoffs, and in the end, Magnus prevailed and was and continues to be our world's champion. Yeah. And today, Magnus, I didn't see what happened in today's game, but in the Isle of Man tournament, he was leading. I think he had 5.5 out of 6. When I saw the game, though, he was white and he was down a little bit. It slightly worse position, but I wouldn't worry about Magnus too much.
Yeah, I think Magnus will be fine.
Yeah. So in any case, that's the history of the World Chess Championships. I'm leaving out people that have made big influences on the game, like Nimzovich and Keres and different people along the way and such that were never world's champion. And there was certainly a lot of them.
Well, I thank you for the quick lesson.
The Reader's Digest version of chess and the history of the World Chess Championships.
Hey, that's a lot of history for 40 minutes, if you ask me.
Well, I'm glad we got people to actually stick around and watch.
So all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're actually going to reset, and we're going to do our next Kickstarter live stream in about 20 minutes, and focusing on end games.
All right.
So if you want to hop back on Kickstarter live in a little bit. Or if you just want to skip the video and go right to pre-ordering Coach Jay's Chess Academy, hey,
we're not going to argue.
Stop you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you watching.
All right. See you soon.